And I've been with Steel for a little bit over a year, and I just have to say I'm absolutely loving it. In addition to that, I've been in the insurance industry for about 20 years, so been around the block a couple times, and I'm going to be the moderator for the session today. Today's panel will discuss enrollment concepts used by many of our customers, all of you, including active versus passive enrollment methods. And we're also going to hear from one of our top benefit counselors on the type of discussions that he has with your employees when he's out there visiting on site with them, or sometimes through the call center, and how he helps them to decide what he is going to recommend for them, for their family, to help them make their decisions. Before we get started, I do want to introduce the panel. And we have Joe Lilly. He's been with Steel for 15 years. He is a rock star of a benefits counselor. Like, he is the best of the best, I swear. We have also Melissa McAllister. She is one of our customer success executives, and she's been with us for 5 years. Ben Hunter, who is also one of our customer success executives, and he's been with us for 3 years, and he also has 20 years of experience in the insurance industry. And then we also have Melissa Buckler. While Melissa Buckler is new to Steel, she does have 5 years of HR benefits experience, and so we're going to pick her brain a little bit with some questions. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is trying to show you the difference between active versus passive enrollments. And we have a few questions lined up for our panel here, and we'll just kind of dive in so that we can stay on track. Melissa M., can you define what it means to have an active enrollment?
So a truly active enrollment is where all employees have to complete enrollment. So sometimes this is referred to as a mandatory open enrollment, where everybody completes enrollment. Anybody who does not complete enrollment loses their coverage that they currently have for the new plan year. Most of our customers, most of what we see is an implied active enrollment, where we tell people you have to complete enrollment. We need you to log in to enroll. Everybody must enroll this year. We need everybody to look at their benefit elections every single year. But in reality, if they don't go through it, we'll let them keep their current coverage, but they do have to pay for that new premium if premiums are increasing for any sort of reason for the new plan year. So most customers, most of you guys in the room have that implied active enrollment. So we really encourage employees to go through enrollment, but we will let them keep their coverage that they have. We don't allow employees to keep flexible spending accounts. Those are per IRS regulations. So they can keep, medical, dental, vision, life insurance, anything like that. But flexible spending accounts are the true exception to that. We do not allow anybody to roll those benefits over for that reason.
Great. And Joe, can you give us a little bit of a different perspective from the benefits counselor look at this? What would you consider a successful active enrollment to look like?
Well, for me, I think an active enrollment for a counselor perspective means trying to see as many of your employees as we possibly can. And that means that we have to have excellent communication to the employees, letting them know that, that they should come and see us. That means an active enrollment, we would need to see at least 90 to 95% of your employees. Having people come in, to me, face-to-face is always the best active enrollment, because they're seeing someone, they're visiting with a counselor. We've done many active enrollments in the call center, but to me, being an enroller, I love to get in the field, and I think a face-to-face enrollment with your employees really creates that bond and that trust that we have with your employees.
Great, thank you. And Ben, let's flip the coin a little bit, and can you explain how a passive enrollment works?
Yeah. Hello. Okay. This one's not as complicated as an active enrollment. In fact, it's pretty easy. Enrollment dates are communicated to employees, and employees either have the option to log in and make changes to their benefits, update their beneficiaries and dependent information, or simply do nothing at all. And the exception to that would be like what Melissa said, which would be updating their FSA and HSA elections. And in that case, they can't just make those elections and skip everything else. They have to go through the full enrollment process. So typically that's a self-service enrollment, and there is sometimes some additional support from our call center as well.
Great. And both Melissa's and Ben, can you talk about, in your experience, what are the benefits to having an active enrollment versus a passive one? And specifically, what are the advantages to the employee and the employer?
Sure, I'll go first. So this open enrollment time is really the only time a year that employees think about their benefits, unfortunately. So when you have that captive audience of open enrollment time, it's really your chance to educate employees on what you do offer. So we had speakers this morning who are talking about employee loyalty and turnover, and we want to communicate your brand. We want to make sure that employees are falling in love with your brand. So what can we do during that time frame? And for most of you, it's about 2 weeks that you have for open enrollment. So we communicate for 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, and then we send reminders all the time during open enrollment. And so we really have their attention for about 4 weeks on what's offered to them. We have the opportunity to really also explain how benefits work together. So yes, you offer a health plan, but what if there are some gaps in their health plan? What if we offer an accident plan as well? What about a critical illness plan to complement that high deductible health plan? What about a hospital plan that goes along with short-term disability? So I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces from last year. I was pregnant last year, so have a newborn child, so this is very relevant to me. Hospital plan with short-term disability, high deductible health plan, health savings account, all that kind of stuff. How do all of those things work together to really benefit the employee? So you guys have that opportunity during annual open enrollment to communicate that. It also forces employees to think about what their life is going to look like next year. So if they're thinking about starting a family, if they're thinking about having surgeries in the next year, if they have some underlying health issues or something like that, what's that going to look like for the next year? So really giving employees the opportunity to think about their life, think about what they're going to need, think about what their families are going to need the next year. The advantage for you is employees are more loyal if they know what's being offered. So Jen Daniel just mentioned turnover, and employees are thinking about their total compensation package. They're not just thinking about their salary. Their benefits are part of that total comp package. So this is your chance to communicate to them, what is that total comp? What does that look like? And you guys all know that you're competing for top talent. So what are you offering to your employees to get them in the door, to stay loyal to you? What are you offering to your current employees to keep them there as well? Also making sure that employees are looking at their beneficiaries. So we've seen a lot of changes over the past couple years with the pandemic of how people are looking at their life insurance. Some of you guys have called me and said, hey, we have a life claim at our organization, and it breaks my heart a little bit, but reality is employees need to be looking at their beneficiaries and who is that going to? Who's that money going to be paid out to? And need to be reviewing that every year. So active enrollments make sure that employees are looking at all of that. They're taking the time to read the material that you have spent hours and hours and hours putting together for them, making sure that they have an understanding for that as well. I've seen passive enrollments be pretty successful when there's a shorter plan year. So if you're changing from, mid-plan year, like if you enroll in May for a June 1 or July 1 or whatever, and then you're changing it to a 1/1, so you're having a shorter plan year and need a passive enrollment for those few months as you're making that transition, that seems to work well too. So that's been my experience over the past few years in this role. So I'm going to pass it over to Ben.
So in echoing a lot of what Jen Daniel just talked about, and also Melissa, with an active enrollment, your employees are more engaged in your benefits. They have a better understanding of what your benefits are, the full benefit package, how to utilize those benefits. So in the event there is a medical occurrence that does come up, their expenses aren't over the top. They're not hitting their bank accounts real hard. They're not expecting something that is unexpected. In a lot of cases, too, most employees feel that a PPO plan is probably the best option, but in all reality, that's not the case. And that's why we have people like Joe and our enrollment counselors who are there to help understand, maybe this year PPO is the best plan for you, but maybe you should start looking at a high deductible health plan and look at how that cost utilization helps, and how you can fully utilize then that health savings account plan and pairing it with some ancillary products like an accident or a hospital plan or a critical illness plan to help save monies to your bottom line, so that way they're not having to pay so much in premiums but also impacting employer premiums as well.
Melissa?
So while passive enrollments may be a little beneficial to the HR user just for the mere fact that it may be a little less work just due to, not many employees are enrolling, there's really no advantage that I see to the actual employee because they may miss out on some valuable benefits that could work in their advantage. Situations like Melissa said, situations, benefit needs change. If they don't get into that system and see those benefits, it's not going to click to them, be like, hey, that could help, for my upcoming surgery to sign up for the hospital plan or short-term disability. Another downfall is beneficiaries get overlooked, like Melissa was saying, and I've seen it firsthand where a beneficiary did not get updated and an employee had gone through a divorce and their ex-spouse got those benefits instead of the grieving family who needed it at that time.
That's really great information, you guys. Joe, from the benefits counselor's perspective, can you talk a little bit about the types of discussions that you have with employees and what you educate them on, as well as how you help them determine which benefits are most important to them?
Yes, my job as a benefits counselor, number one job is to educate. Sit down with your employees and educate them on the value of the benefits that you as the employer offers to them. So many times what I'll do first is start with a simple fact finding. I'll often have time to review ahead of time their hire date, their birth date, their family members if they're in the computer, a little bit about what I know. And then based upon some of that information, I'll begin my enrollment session, counseling session with them. I will typically start at the core benefits. A lot of people have medical insurance. Most people don't understand what a deductible is. What's a deductible? How does that affect me? Don't understand the out-of-pocket. How does that affect me? And I'll try to do the simple explanation as possible. Medical insurance, as you know, can be very complicated. So my job is to simplify that for the employee. And they'll typically go, oh my gosh, I did not know how that deductible worked. Some people come in and they've used the deductible and they go, my gosh, I can't believe I had to spend $3,000 for my kid's broken arm. I can't believe that. So I'll let that sit for a while and I'll move on to the benefit that's custom to that employee. So once I finish with the medical, dental, vision, a lot of folks, again, don't know about HSAs or FSAs. How does that save them money? How does that affect them? And the purpose of a lot of these benefits, the value is financial for most of these, right? So we explained the financial value of the HSA, of the FSA. Then I typically would move on to, based upon who I'm seeing, I would condition them to view the benefits more appropriate to them. So, for example, a new employee just starting with their company may have access to what we call guaranteed issue. As you know, guaranteed issue benefits, such as short-term disability, life insurance. A lot of our supplemental policies are also guaranteed issue. How does that affect them? They need education on why it's important to perhaps sign up for these now because you're a new employee. Next open enrollment, these may not be a guaranteed issue for you at that time. And even though you may be in good health today, there's no guarantee that next year or the next month that something may come up which would disqualify you from that benefit. I often get a younger employee that's just hired maybe in the next within the past 2 or 3 years. We want them to know the value of, for example, locking in their price on a life insurance policy. A lot of you offer the whole life benefit through several companies. Locking in on a whole life policy at age 25, 30, 35, even 40, how does that affect them? What's the value of doing that for them? And often that whole life policy will include long-term care. What's that? Why should somebody 35 care about long-term care? So those are things that we can discuss as well. Also, we may get a newly married employee. Well, the short-term disability is something that I would begin to pivot with immediately. The value of having short-term disability, if the company doesn't already provide it, will offer a significant amount of financial assistance for you should you need it to start a family, as well as the hospital benefit, a supplement that would help you as well. Often I get people that have children, a lot of times have children. And how does the accident benefit provide value for them should something happen to one of their children, one of the kids playing football, one of the kids has a concussion, even dad's on the treadmill falls and breaks his arm. So these are things that I kind of gear toward the individual I'm speaking with, the employee. An older employee, 50-something, maybe close to retirement, do they have a whole life policy to keep when they retire? A lot of employees, especially in the educational field, retire early. And so they may retire at 55 or 60, and they lose their group life insurance policy, or they're able to keep it, but it's just so darn expensive to convert that over, you know? Why not lock in now on a permanent portable policy you can keep when you retire with no medical exam, no health questions, often that's the case, no physical. I was an insurance agent for 20 years before I started with Steel, and I know a nurse that comes out, takes your, blood and asks you medical questions. It's a lot more convenient to have all that done while you're employed and having the employer offer something like that. I also like to talk about a single person, a young man perhaps, maybe 25, not married, no kids, comes in, doesn't need anything. We all seen that. And I'll say, well, what if you're out hiking and you twist your ankle? And so you go to the emergency room and they do an x-ray, you see a doctor, and you think everything's great. Then about a month later you get a bill from the hospital for $1,000. And the guy goes, what? Yeah, well, a lot of people don't have $1,000 laying around when you're 25 years old. The accident plan is something you should strongly consider. So that values that single young man or young woman to help them with their needs. Also, I also like to stress again, and I'll end this, is the portability of a lot of what we offer are completely portable. Meaning when you retire, whether you retire at 50 or 55, and you have to go on a supplemental policy with a high deductible, the accident, the critical, the hospital, all that's going to help supplement your needs until you reach the age of Medicare. So the portability of the life insurance is something I always educate folks about when I see them as well. So to make a long story short, I educate folks. I highlight the benefits based upon their individual needs, and I try to do what I can to create value in everything that they're doing when they sit to visit with me, for you and the company as well.
Now, Joe, I wasn't going to ask you this, but I'm going to, and he is not prepared for this. I noticed earlier in Jennifer's presentation, she mentioned the fact that the average time a person spends is about 18 minutes. Are you able to get through all that in 18 minutes, Joe?
Well, again, it depends on the person. Someone 25 years old, single, may not be, getting the full information on the critical as someone 60 years old. So that person may want to know more about the disability if they have children or the accident, but maybe the critical would be the last thing I would show them. But I make sure that they realize everything that's available to them, everything. So even though I have a limited amount of time, I do what I can to focus on what I think the needs are for each individual person that I meet.
That's great. I'm not really sure how you keep all that straight, so that's why you do what you do and I do what I do, right? Let's switch over the conversation to communications. Melissa B., from your experience as an HR benefits coordinator, for a typical enrollment, what types of communications would you typically provide to try to encourage employees to enroll?
So in my previous role as the benefits coordinator, we would use flyers, emails, and texting through the Engage services just so we could try to utilize every touch point that we could to get the information out to our employees, whether it be rate changes or open enrollment dates, things like that. The flyers we would post about a month in advance before open enrollment began. We'd put it at every location, kind of in the high traffic areas, to make sure everybody could see those and would know what was coming up. Engage was awesome to utilize because we have bus drivers who we don't want getting text during their routes. We found it very helpful to send the text messages about open enrollment throughout open enrollment in the evening hours, so then spouses are home together. They can sit down and have those discussions and figure out what is going to work best for them and their family. As well, there's maybe not as many distractions as during working hours if you kind of remind them at night, hey, remember open enrollment, get your stuff. We would also do a benefits fair before each school year. So we would invite our vendors or carriers to come out to talk to our employees, to kind of explain their products, how they're best utilized, so our employees kind of had a better understanding of what we offered, and they'd be a little more comfortable come open enrollment time.
Great. And I know you've heard Engage mentioned a couple of times here today. It is part of the Celerix package that we offer. For those of you who don't know a lot about Engage, maybe you're newer this year, it's a tool that can be used to communicate with your employees. And where are they at? Nowadays, they're all on their phones, right? So Engage will allow you to communicate with them via text message or email. And also you can target different groups of employees or all of your employees. And you don't have to use it just during open enrollment either. You can use it all throughout the year. If you want to do a survey or something like that, it allows you to do that year-round. So my question for Melissa, and both Melissas actually, is can you talk about some trends that you've seen when Engage messages are used to promote enrollment?
So I've been fortunate enough to be around before Engage and then after Engage, and it's been really interesting for me to kind of watch the transition. One of my groups actually had about 20% of employees complete open enrollment in a completely self-service environment, 20% completed in the first 3 days of open enrollment. Most employees wait until the last 3 days to enroll. Last year, I was that employee. So confession for me, I was that employee. My husband carried our insurance, and in October, we got a message saying that, hey, open enrollment are these days, it's passive, you don't have to do anything. I'm like, okay, well, I know what that means because I'm in this industry. But we have a dependent care flexible spending account. So we're going to lose that if we don't re-enroll. So time passes, and he went on paternity leave with our son. I went back to work, and he was not getting any reminder emails from his company while he was on leave because he was not checking his work email. So it comes down to like the last night or two, and I think 9 o'clock at night, I was like, oh no, open enrollment is ending tomorrow. We have to enroll. So I was that employee last year. Life was a little bit busy for us, but how great would that have been, just for my own personal experience, if he was getting text messages saying, hey, it's open enrollment. You haven't enrolled yet. And then he could tell me, because I'm the one who enrolls for our family, he can tell me, hey, babe, we got to enroll. It's time. So that happens with, I know that I'm not the only person who has experienced that. But those engaged messages, as Melissa said, if they're going out in the evenings, a lot of times spouses want to have those conversations with each other, or they just want to take they want to take the 18 minutes that they have. And maybe they don't have 18 minutes during the workday to really think about what it is that they need and plan for the next year. So they don't take the time to do it.
So in my previous role, once we had initiated Engage, we probably got between 80 and 90% of all of our employees to get in and complete open enrollment, which was a big increase than what we had previously. And I think it was just by getting that information out, we were reaching more people, especially our custodians, our food service, our bus drivers. They don't have access really to the computers, but they have their phone. So they were getting those text messages and able to know when those dates are. And another really cool feature I thought with Engage, you can target specific locations and job classes. So for the location feature, if we had an enroller coming out to our transportation department, I could send a text message just to those transportation employees saying, hey, an enroller is going to be out on Friday from this time to this time. Make sure to sign up and get your appointment time so you can get some assistance if you need for enrollment. And then another one of my biggest complaints when I had first started this position was retirees felt left out of the loop. They didn't know what was happening with open enrollment. They didn't know if there were benefit changes. They kind of got forgotten about because they were no longer an active employee. So I could simply check one little box and Engage, and they got all the other communication that all of our other employees were receiving, and they really, really appreciated that.